Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Arthur Finch, and I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 31 years old. It feels like another man's life now, looking back across the great, quiet expanse of the years. But the memory is as clear and sharp as a piece of broken glass. Before the war, my world was built on structure. It smelled of chalk dust, floor polish, and the rain-soaked wool coats of children drying by the radiator. I was a teacher in Dover. My trade was in building things, not with bricks or steel, but with grammar, with history, with multiplication tables. I believed that any problem, any confusion in a young mind could be solved with a clear lesson plan. You start with the known, you introduce the unknown, you practice, and you build a bridge of understanding. Order, logic, patience, that was my world. The war took my lesson plan and tore it to shreds. The Royal Engineers taught me a new kind of instruction, a reverse engineering of chaos. As a sapper, my job wasn't to build, but to unbuild, to look at a perfectly innocent-looking stretch of road, a closed door, a discarded ration tin, and see not what it was, but what it could be. A trigger, a pressure plate, a grave waiting to be opened. My new classroom was the earth itself, and my students were the young men whose lives depended on my ability to read the enemy's deadly grammar. I had to be methodical. I had to be calm. I had to teach them how to stay alive, one careful step at a time. People think of the end of the war as one great, victorious roar. It wasn't. It was a grind, a slow, muddy, bloody crawl into the heart of Germany. By March of '45, after we'd crossed the Rhine in Operation Plunder, every town was a fortress, every house a potential tomb. And for me, on a gray, damp morning in a shattered little town whose name I can't even recall, my two worlds, the teacher and the sapper, were about to collide in a single, silent classroom. It was the silence that got you first. Not the peaceful quiet of the Kentish countryside, but a dead, listening silence. The kind that follows a barrage, when the air is still vibrating and your ears are ringing, and you just know, something is waiting in that stillness. The town was a ruin, jagged teeth of brick where houses used to be, the guts of family homes spilled out into the streets. Our objective was a 2-story brick building at the end of what was once a pleasant, tree-lined lane. The trees were splintered stumps now. The building, it was a school. I knew it instantly. The proportions were right. The height of the windows, the suggestion of a playground out back, now a cratered mess of mud and twisted metal. Sergeant Davies clapped me on the shoulder, his grin not quite reaching his tired eyes. "Your territory, Finch. Jerry's been and gone, but he's a spiteful bastard. Left us some presents, I'd wager. You Corporal Shaw and Private Calloway, sweep it, make it clean." Shaw was a good man, steady as a rock. Calloway was just a boy, barely 19, his face still holding a softness the war hadn't yet managed to scour away. My fear, the cold stone that lived permanently in my gut, wasn't for myself. It was for him. It was the teacher in me, the protector. My lesson plan for the day had one objective: get this boy home in one piece. "Right, lads," I said, keeping my voice level, the tone I used to use for explaining long division. "Let's go over the syllabus. No rushing. Eyes are your best tool. We check the approach first, then the threshold. Door frame, handle, hinges. Everything is a question, and we don't move on until we have the answer." "Understood." They nodded. We moved. The world shrank to the few feet in front of me. Every loose stone, every bit of rubble was a potential threat. My probe, a thin steel rod, became an extension of my fingers, gently tracing the ground ahead. The smell was of damp concrete, cordite, and something else, something foul. Rot. The air was heavy, wet, it clung to you. We reached the school's main entrance. The heavy oak doors were blown inwards, hanging off their hinges like broken teeth. A clear invitation, too clear. "Hold," I whispered. My mind was a checklist. Tripwire at ankle height, knee height, trace the frame. Look for the telltale scratch marks of a drill, the faint glint of copper wire. My hands, encased in thin leather gloves, moved with a slow, practiced grace. I felt a ghost of a sensation then, the memory of a child's small hand in mine, guiding a piece of chalk across a blackboard. The thought vanished as my fingertips brushed against a thin, taut wire running from the door jamb to a loose pile of bricks inside. It was a simple pull fuse, connected to a teller mine, most likely. Amateurish, but deadly. My breath hitched for a fraction of a second. "Wire," I said, my voice as flat as the gray sky above. "Calloway, stay put. Shaw, watch our backs." Time slowed down. The world became the wire, my wire cutters, and the steady beat of my own heart. I explained every step, as much for my own benefit as for theirs. "See the slack. He didn't rig it tight. He was rushed. We cut from the fuse side first. One clean snip. Don't pull, don't jerk, just release the tension." Snip. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. One lesson complete. We moved inside. The corridor was a wreck, plaster hung from the ceiling in sheets. The floor was a carpet of glass, spent cartridges and paper. Torn pages from books fluttered in the draft from the broken windows. I saw a fragment of a page with a colorful drawing of an apple. A foot fell. The air was thick with the dust of destruction, but underneath it I could swear I smelled it. That faint, unmistakable scent of chalk dust and old paper, a sensory ghost from my other life. We had to clear it room by room. Classroom A. Classroom B, the headmaster's office. Each door was a new problem, a new test. Some were rigged simply. Others were more complex, designed to catch the unwary second or third man through the door. The Smine, the bouncing Betty, was a favorite. Hidden under a floorboard, it would leap into the air and detonate at waist height. A truly vicious piece of engineering. We found 3. Each time the process was the same. The slow approach, the probe, the identification. The long, agonizing moments of disarming it, my mind reciting the steps like a prayer, my hands steady while my insides churned. Calloway was doing well. He was learning. He spotted a tripwire across the top of a staircase that I might have missed. I gave him a nod, a teacher's quiet approval. He almost smiled. Then we came to the last room on the ground floor, Classroom C. The door was slightly ajar. That was always a bad sign. It was an invitation to be lazy, to just push it open. I knelt, my cheek almost to the floor, trying to see underneath. Nothing. My probe slid under, meeting no resistance. It felt wrong. Something's not right, I murmured. He wants us to use the door. Shaw scanned the walls, loose plaster there above the lintel. He was right. A section of the wall looked disturbed, a pressure release switch. The act of opening the door would release a pin, which would detonate a charge hidden in the wall. A clever trap. The kind of thing that separates the quick from the dead. We'd have to go through the wall itself. Carefully, using the butts of our rifles, we knocked a hole in the plasterboard of the corridor wall, a few feet from the doorframe. We worked in near silence, the gentle crunching of the plaster sounding like cannon shots in the stillness. I peered through the hole and I froze. It was a classroom for the very young. Small wooden chairs and desks were overturned, scattered like toys. A large blackboard dominated one wall, covered in half-erased German script. But it was the other wall that held me. It was a bulletin board, and it was covered in children's drawings. They were pinned up in neat rows, lopsided houses with plumes of smoke curling from the chimneys. Bright yellow suns with smiling faces tucked into the corner of the page. Stick-figure families holding hands, the mother always taller than the father. They were drawn with crayon, with colored pencil. They were universal. I'd seen 1,000 drawings just like them on the walls of my own school in Dover. My mind, the sapper's mind, a machine of logic and threat assessment, simply stopped. The gears ground to a halt. All the training, all the hardened discipline fell away. In that moment, I wasn't Corporal Finch of the Royal Engineers. I was Mr. Finch, the teacher. My war was about them and us, about the abstract evil of an ideology. It was about maps and objectives and strategic gains. Suddenly, it was about this. A drawing of a cat with mismatched eyes, a wobbly painting of a blue flower. These were the children of the enemy. The children of the men who were trying to kill me, who had killed my friends. And they dreamt of the same simple, beautiful things our children dreamt of. Smiling suns, safe homes. Behind one of the drawings, I saw it. The faint shadow of a wire. My blood ran cold. He had booby-trapped the drawings. He had used the very symbol of innocence as bait. The rage that filled me was cold, pure, and absolute. It wasn't the hot anger of battle. It was a deep, profound violation. This was a desecration of something sacred. This wasn't war. This was blasphemy. He's wired the board, I said, my voice a low growl I didn't recognize. From behind the wall, the next hour was the most intense of my life. We had to work from the corridor, peeling away the plaster, tracing the wires. It was a spider's web, connected to 3 grenades with their pins partially pulled, held in place by the tension of the wires. One careless move, one drawing pulled from the board, and the room would have been filled with flying steel. The methodical calm returned, but this time it was different. It was fueled by that cold fury. I wasn't just clearing a room. I was performing a rescue. I was saving those silly, wonderful, lopsided houses. I was saving those smiling suns. When the last wire was cut, the last grenade rendered safe, I finally stepped into the classroom. I walked over to the board and stood before it. Shaw and Calloway stayed in the doorway, silent. They understood. I reached out and touched one of the drawings. The paper was rough under my glove. A little girl named Helga had signed it in the corner, her letters big and clumsy. She had drawn her family, a mother, a father, and a little girl in a red dress. And that's when my resolve, my entire reason for being there, crystallized. My motivation had always been a bit vague, a belief in the future, in a world free from tyranny. Now it had a face. It was Helga's face. I wasn't fighting to defeat her father. I was fighting so that one day, Helga could go back to school and draw another picture, and not have to worry that the wall it was pinned to might explode. I went back to teaching after the war. For 30 more years, I stood in front of classrooms full of children, but I was never quite the same. Every time a child would bring me a drawing to pin to the wall, for a fleeting second, my blood would run cold. I'd see the ghost of a wire behind the smiling sun. I could never again look at a school, at any place of learning, and see it as just a building. I saw its fragility. I saw how easily a place of creation could be turned into a place of destruction. The war taught me that a school is not made of bricks and mortar. It's made of an idea. The idea that we can build a future better than our past. And that idea is the most fragile thing in the world. It must be protected. It must be swept from minds. The deadly remnants of hatred and ideology have to be carefully, methodically, and bravely dismantled, or they will lie in wait for the next generation. That's the hardest lesson. You don't fight a war to destroy what is in front of you. You fight it to protect what you've left behind and what you hope can one day be again. Sometimes you find a piece of what you're protecting in the most unexpected and heartbreaking of places. A classroom in an enemy town, a drawing of a lopsided house, signed by a little girl you will never know. This memory is a piece of shrapnel I carry. It's heavy. Help me carry it. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never left to rust in silence.